All right, welcome back. Dress for Health, Lesson 2. We're diving into more of the science side and talking about the actual nutrients themselves. If you remember back to 9th grade health class, you probably had a chapter talking about nutrition. And the nutrients that we are meaning are 6 main ones. You have water, you have carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, both macro, large, and micro, small. But healthy food is comprised of whole. The more whole these nutrients are, the more beneficial to our health. And the more whole these nutrients are, the better the function that they perform in the body, with water being the regulator of everything. Carbohydrates, when we break those down, those are primarily plant-based foods. They break down into sugars. We use sugar for energy, we use sugar for mental processes, we use sugars for all kinds of things in the body that it's helpful, but when we denature and refine carbohydrates, that's where the sugar component becomes health detrimental. Proteins turn into amino acids when they get broke down and metabolized in the body. Fats become fatty acids. They form different chains and build different metabolic pathways and actually help build hormones and neurotransmitters for mood regulation and mental health. Vitamins are coenzymes. Minerals are cofactors. They actually turn things on in the body. They actually open doors to certain hormone signals or neurons firing. Without vitamins and minerals, you may have all these processes taking place, but literally the last step can't happen. Or the very first step can't happen in the chain of metabolic processes. So nutrition is key to every aspect of our health, not only because of the nutrients themselves, but how they function in the body. So when we think about building a nutrition plan, we want to think of whole foods, so your apple versus your applesauce versus your apple juice, right? And then we want to think of how does our body handle that food or break it down or utilize it. So we do a lot with digestive healing, we do a lot with hormone regulation when we talk about nutrition and health, because those are the foundations of every other health condition that develops. So proteins, really quick overview, they're the builders. They build, they construct, they fight off disease. They carry things. They function, they build structure. Proteins are your stable nutrient. You need about the same amount of protein every day to maintain our health. It's the core foundational nutrient. And it's because from proteins come amino acids. Amino acids break down. They're the building block of so many things in our body, especially neurotransmitters. So when someone's having struggles with depression, anxiety, immune function, it's going to be at the protein level that it's solved. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our energy source. So as proteins are our builders, carbohydrates produce energy. So if you're walking around functioning, living tired all the time, chances are your body, your metabolism's not processing carbohydrates correctly. They provide, they regulate, they clean out. They're your detoxifiers. They support some processes. They can also communicate a lot of different messages in the body. Without these fibers, a lot of fiber comes from carbohydrates, a lot of sugars come from carbohydrates. We want to make sure these are whole, complex, not refined and denatured and simple. So the slower the body can convert things to sugar, foods to sugar, the better the balance of energy. So we talk about carbohydrates, we're talking about energy production. Our body can also burn ketones, and ketones come from fat. So protein's your stabilizer, carbohydrates your energy source, fats are your protection, and they're also another source of energy. We want to have that metabolic flexibility to be able to burn both carbs, sugars, and fats or ketones. Fats protect. We see fat surrounding an animal muscle meat. We see fat surrounding our organs in our body. Fats are protective. So we want to dismiss the myth that we've been taught over the last 70 to 100 years that fats are negative, fats are bad. A lot of awareness is coming out that that's not entirely true. It's the type of fats and how they've been processed. They cover things, they metabolize, they form. Fats form hormones. Every single hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, adrenaline, every single hormone is built from fatty acids. So if we don't have enough fats in our diet, it's going to affect our hormone balance. Every single cell in our body has a phospholipid. Lipid is another word for fat. Phospho is phosphorus. So phosphorus and a lipid membrane. Every single cell. Trillions of cells in the body. So if we're wanting to communicate messages back and forth, they have to get into the cell, and that depends on the integrity or the health at the cellular level, at the cellular membrane. Fats are a part of that. Fats keep us satiated, allow us not to feel hungry. So if you feel hungry a couple hours after you eat, you probably didn't have enough fat in your diet. Eating fats more in the morning for people that want to balance their blood sugar is key. But getting those natural, healthy fats like avocados and olive oil, salmon and fatty fish, nuts, pasture-raised raw dairy. All those are good, healthy fats versus seed oils like canola and corn, safflower. All those oils in clear containers, chuck them. Those are the ones that have been highly processed and don't do the same function in the body as the good, healthy, natural fats. Vitamins are helpers. They come alongside. They enable, they support. They resist infection. They enable us to see better, to regulate our heartbeats, to break down sugars in a really regulated, stable way. Vitamin D is even considered a vitamin and almost a hormone with its types of functions in the body, the things that it turns on, turns off, the things that it signals. So there's fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Those four can be stored in the body. And then the water-soluble vitamins, vitamin B and vitamin C, all the vitamin Bs, B1, B2, B12, B6, all those and vitamin C are water-soluble, so your body uses what it needs and excretes or eliminates the rest. So that's going to be kind of important when we talk about supplements. All right, minerals. Minerals are the spark plugs of life. A numerous amount of health conditions can be traced back to a simple mineral deficiency. Minerals literally allow insulin to enter a cell. Chromium is the mineral that opens the door, so to speak, of our cells and lets insulin in to lower blood sugar. Magnesium helps to relax muscle contractions. Potassium, same thing. Calcium builds the bones and also controls the body's pH. So minerals are the spark plugs of life. They help to facilitate, they provide, they balance, they maintain. They help all the functions actually happen. Most minerals are soil-based. There's also rock-based, ocean-based. They're part of our planet. And minerals are what we degenerate to when we die. Our body decomposes. All that's left are minerals. So minerals are the spark plugs of life from the ground, from other sources in our globe that provide so much of our health connections of all the processes working together. Minerals have a relationship with each other. There's a balance. When we talk about supplementation, the best way to take minerals is liquid form. We want to make sure we're eating the foods that are whole, non-denatured, so that they're containing the minerals that they should in their original design. Did you know that every single disease state, there's not one that isn't linked to dehydration? Water is the regulator. It's not about the solutes. It's not about what gets dissolved in the water, the minerals, the hormones, and amino acids and vitamins. It's not about all of that. It's really about the water. It's about the solvent. Water transports, it flushes, it cushions, it optimizes, it improves. It is really the most abundant nutrient on our planet, and we are most deficient in water. There is no substitute for water. We can't include tea and lemonade and sparkling water even as our daily water intake, because a lot of those drinks are really diuretics, especially tea. It actually depletes our water. Not that tea isn't healthy, certain kinds, but nothing replaces or is a substitute for our daily water intake. We really need to be drinking about half of our body weight in ounces, with a max of 100 ounces in a day. And there was a doctor who was caught at the wrong time, wrong place in one of the Eastern European wars, and he and a bunch of people in his community were put in prison. He wrote a book, The Body's Many Cries for Water, because what he discovered during his time in jail and time in prison during this war was that everybody that was stressed, that had upper GI, that had heart palpitations, that had effects of being in confinement, negative effects on their health, he would actually be treating them with water. Sounds so simple, but the profound results and discoveries that he made in there, and that you can imagine the water was not the best and the most, pure, clean, filtered kind. He just had probably the worst water, and yet the medicinal effects of just giving these prisoners around him water made great impacts on their health. So the body's many cries for water, a great resource, and so such a great correlation spiritually with who Jesus is as the living water. He's abundant, he's free, and he's often the most deficient in our culture. And just a little bit of Jesus is powerful enough to set the prisoner spiritually free. Jesus says, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." All right, so let's make nutrition practical for a minute and talk about labeling, nutrition labeling. Kind of be a little bit confusing for sure. We want to hit these three main things: quantity, types, and GMOs. A lot of times we can be kind of tricked or duped into thinking something's healthy when it's labeled with low sodium or reduced fat or gluten-free or whatever. These are trying to communicate that this food that you're going to be buying, this popcorn or this bag of chips, doesn't have or has some kind of reduced levels of. And what we need to remember with quantity labels is low is relative compared to what? Reduced is relative compared to what? Free doesn't necessarily mean it has nothing. It just means it has to have less than 0.5 grams of that in the food. So it's not necessarily 100% free of. And a lot of times, quantity labels try to tout that they're, let's say, for example, gluten-free, when really the food that they're selling has no gluten in it to begin with. There was never gluten in it. So quantity, I don't put a lot of stock in when I'm grocery shopping, unless you know what to compare it to. Low compared to or relative to what. Then we look at type. So a lot of things are labeled, especially grain-based food products we see in the grocery store, as fortified or enriched. A lot of times we see, animal products labeled natural. What do these words mean? So fortified just simply means the original food never really had a specific nutrient in it, and it's been added. So you see orange juice fortified with calcium. So calcium's not really naturally occurring in oranges. They've added calcium to orange juice to quote-unquote make it healthy. But really, if the design of oranges didn't have calcium in it, why add it? What benefit health-wise, what function in the body would those additive nutrients function the same as naturally occurring ones? And I believe the answer is no. Enriched just simply means a product or a food was stripped originally in the processing of some nutrients. So for example, vitamin E is stripped out of grains or wheat in order to make bread a lot more shelf stable, because vitamin E a lot of times contains the oil. It's in the germ of the grain. So when we strip nutrients out of a food and then we try to add that back in a certain point in the process, we're enriching it. But a lot of times when we add it back in, there's synthetic types. They're not the same naturally occurring ratios, quantities. So again, we're losing the function. Although on the label it says, yeah, there's vitamin E, there's vitamin B, there's vitamin D in here. It looks good on the label, but the function of the body is not going to be the same. Natural, there's really no standard for natural. There's really no qualifications a food has to meet to be labeled as natural, so keep that in mind. Organic means that a specific level of soil had to be achieved, or standard of soil, so a certain level of minerals, certain level of vitamins has to be true. An absence of certain types of chemicals and fertilizers, an absence of genetically modification. Organic, I first thought, when I first started studying nutrition, was kind of a bunch of hype. And when I came to realize organic is really what our grandmother's food was, right? Without all the regulations and red tape. And but organic today, I thought I could just wash all the pesticides, fertilizers off the skin, fruit or vegetable and be fine, but it's really the soil. It's really the soil quality that organic can guarantee. And there's a clean 15 and dirty dozen list from the Environmental Working Group. Great resource. It's part of our Eureka Holistic Nutrition shopping guide, free shopping guide. And the benefit of organic is you're not getting any genetic modifications. You're not getting any genetic modified foods if the food is labeled organic. So that's another added benefit. So GMOs, they are not required, at least in the United States, to be labeled. The top 5 genetically modified foods right now, so 100% of corn, unless it's organic, is genetically modified. So you think of corn syrups, think corn starch, you think of corn itself. There's a lot of corn-based products out there on the market, that corn chips, they're genetically modified unless they're labeled organic. Soy is also genetically modified, 100%, unless it's labeled organic. Cottonseed, sometimes we think, yeah, is that a food? Sometimes that's an ice cream. Cottonseed oil, that's a genetically modified commodity crop. Canola or rapeseed is genetically modified, and beet sugar. So any sugar that you buy that's refined, processed sugar in the store, unless it says cane sugar, comes from beets. And most of the time the beets are going to be genetically modified. So if we're eating refined, very highly processed refined white sugar that's not labeled cane sugar, you're getting genetically modified foods, and you're getting all the negative metabolic consequences of sugar. So I hope that helps in getting started to understand food labels a little better. The Pantry Principle is a fantastic resource if you're wanting to dive into ingredients, what's really in the food. That determines how healthy a food is, not so much all the labels on the outside that try to pretend that here's a healthy food for you, convince you of that. So when you look at a food label itself, you want to look at everything on that food label is based on serving size. So you look at food labels like, oh, this looks pretty good. Then you look up to the very top where the serving size is indicated, and it's like, oh, well, only 1 tablespoon of this food is a serving size. So chances are I'm going to eat 5 tablespoons in one sitting easily of this food. Then I got to multiply everything I see on that label by 5. So labels are based on serving size. Number 2, macronutrient portions. How much protein is in a food? How much carbohydrates? How much fat is in a food? And then number 3, how much sodium and sugar? So sodium, we want to look for foods with less than 150 milligrams of sodium per serving. So on the food label, if you see something that's over 150 milligrams of sodium, I'd consider, I think, twice about eating that food. The sugar, you want to look for anything less than 10 grams of sugar per serving. So if you have a food that's 8 grams, that's all right. You don't eat a ton of them all at once, but less than 10 grams of sugar per serving. So again, think about the serving size, and if you feel like you'd eat easily 3 handfuls of them, and that's, 3 servings, and there's 12 grams of sugar in a serving, you just ate 36 grams of sugar in one sitting. Okay, number 4, 0.5 grams per serving can be labeled as 0. So you could have, let's say, 0.5 grams of trans fat. So it's the hydrogenated yuck fat that you don't want to have. 0.5 grams of trans fat. You can have that in a bag of potato chips, and the potato chips per serving, and the potato chips could still be labeled as having 0 trans fat, trans fat free on the front of the bag. And yet you could have 0.5 grams per serving, and you could have 6 servings. So that's 3 grams of trans fat that you didn't realize was in the bag. And then number 5, ingredients are in quantity order. So after the nutrition content, label, serving size, all that, right below usually is a list of the actual ingredients. And the first few ingredients, first ones listed from left to right, are going to be your higher quantity. So if you see sugar, high fructose corn syrup, any of those sugar-related names, ingredients, is, first or second, third on the list of the ingredients, that means there's a higher amount of anything of that compared to anything else further down in the list of ingredients. We want to try to look for foods that have less than 5 ingredients in that list, and the ones that are listed first and second to be the primary ones, to be really the healthy options. So I hope that's helpful in practical label reading and in your grocery shopping.